Next on Currents News, reaction in the Brooklyn Diocese to the Pope's proclamation about the importance of nativity scenes in public spaces. Plus, President Trump's escalating war words with French President Emmanuel Macron at the NATO summit. And on this International Day of People with Disabilities, an update on making the city's subway accessible for everyone. And it's not your typical school lunch. Why Holy Cross High School in Flushing is serving up fine dining for its students. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm CJ Papa. Pope Francis taking on anyone who thinks a nativity scene does not belong in the public square. In a new letter, the Holy Father says creches should be set up wherever possible. Currents News, Tim Hoffman reports on how that message is being received in the Brooklyn Diocese.
Nativities are mostly found underneath a Christmas tree, not on a New York City sidewalk. But this one in Diker Heights is on full display. John Manero, who makes this by hand, says the highlight of this masterpiece is baby Jesus.
That's the purpose. So the focus is on that.
That's the same message Pope Francis is reinforcing this Christmas season. He just visited the Italian town where St. Francis of Assisi built the first nativity. The Pope wants to see them everywhere, in public and private, in schools, hospitals, and town squares.
Dio ci ama a tal punto da condividere la nostra umanità e la nostra vita.
In this secular city, some people disagree, but not John. He even creates smaller nativity scenes, or presepios, in his basement. John makes most of his presepio sets by screwing pieces of cork together, but he's also made nativity scenes from old picture frames, parts of a tree, and even a glass water bottle. He says regardless of how they're made, Christ remains the focal point.
That's what counts, for religious people especially.
Over at St. Athanasius Church in Bensonhurst, bigger seems better. A life-size nativity draws hundreds traveling along Bay Parkway.
This is what I would say a tool of evangelization because it makes people stop, it makes people think, and makes people reflect on the true meaning of Christmas.
The true meaning of Christmas also on display at Brooklyn's Grand Army Plaza. The mastermind behind the creche and Christmas tree, Mark Steele, says for the most part, passers-by enjoy having the religious symbols in a public space.
Once you start seeing the trees arrive and all these installations going up, you know it's just around the corner.
Mark says a creche is the only reason for the season. In Brooklyn, Tim Hoffman, Currents News.
And mark your calendar, December 5th, this Thursday, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio will bless the Diocese of Brooklyn's tree and nativity during a lighting ceremony at Grand Army Plaza. That's at 5 p.m. in Brooklyn. Everyone is invited to attend. Now, the Pope is promising new beginnings for dozens of refugees. The Holy Father has sent his top charity official, Cardinal Konrad Krajewski, to the Greek island of Lesbos. His mission is to return to the Vatican on Wednesday with a group of 33 refugees seeking political asylum. Another 10 people will arrive by the end of the year. The mission follows the Pope's visit to Lesbos in 2016. He returned home then with 3 Syrian families. The new batch of refugees will be supported by the Holy See. The Democratic-led House Intelligence Committee is accusing President Trump of abusing his power and trying to cover it up. The committee's findings out today claim Trump went too far when he pressured Ukraine to help him in the 2020 presidential campaign while holding up military aid. He then allegedly tried to block Congress from investigating. A separate report by House Republicans reached an opposite conclusion. The next phase will be set in motion tomorrow. The House Judiciary Committee holds public hearings as it decides whether to draft articles of impeachment. Speaking earlier today at the NATO summit, the president said he's coming out ahead on impeachment.
We are winning so big. We had our biggest fundraising month ever. We've had last quarter was unbelievable. I have my best poll numbers that I've ever had. The impeachment hoax is going nowhere.
Now, the president adds that the Republican Party has never been so unified. Impeachment was not the only thing grabbing the president's attention at the summit in London. Trade tensions were front and center with new tariffs on the table. That could have major impacts here and overseas, and the markets are already reacting. Camilla Bernal has the full wrap-up.
The Dow deep in the red. This after President Trump says a trade deal with China may happen much later than expected.
I have no deadline, no. In some ways, I think it's better to wait till after the election.
President Trump in London meeting with world leaders at the NATO summit. But back home, it's the second straight day that the Dow took a dive.
I don't watch the stock market. I watch jobs.
And it's not just tensions with China that may spook investors. On Monday, the U.S. proposed tariffs on French goods like cheese and champagne. This in response to France's digital tax aimed at American tech companies.
We have a minor dispute. I think we'll probably be able to work it out.
Meanwhile, President Trump also threatening to slap tariffs on aluminum and steel imports from Brazil and Argentina, blaming the massive devaluation of their currencies.
I gave them a big break on tariffs. But now I'm taking that break off because it's very unfair to our manufacturers and very unfair to our farmers.
And while at NATO meetings, Trump also pointing to a possible trade deal with Mexico and Canada, blaming Democrats for not passing it in Congress.
It's been sitting in Congress now for 6 or 7 months, and it's a great deal for everybody. So hopefully they can get it done and get it done fast.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said she wants to hold a vote on that deal by the end of the year. Camila Bernal, Currents News.
California Senator Kamala Harris is dropping out of the Democratic presidential race. She is blaming a lack of money for the decision. Now, the move comes after months of slumping poll numbers for Harris, and at the same time, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is going up in the polls. In 2 new surveys, he was either tied or ahead of Harris at 5%. Joe Biden leads both polls, hovering at about the 30% mark. Now to the hunt for an American who is on the FBI's most wanted terror list. Tonight, the feds are offering a $5 million reward for his capture.
It is under these strenuous circumstances that we remember the role played by our beloved Sheikh Osama bin Laden. May Allah have mercy upon him.
A video released by the FBI Monday afternoon showing 37-year-old U.S. citizen Jihad Sirwan Mustafa praising Osama bin Laden.
Today we are here to announce the unsealing of a superseding indictment which charges a former San Diego resident with terrorism.
Investigators call Mustafa the highest-ranking U.S. citizen fighting with the Somalian-based terrorist group Al-Shabaab.
Al-Shabaab's reign of terror threatens United States national security, our international allies, and innocent civilians everywhere.
The indictment expands the scope of an earlier indictment now covering Mustafa's activities up to early 2017, with recent calls by Al-Shabaab to its followers encouraging them to attack U.S. citizens. The FBI says hunting Mustafa down has become even more urgent.
For over a decade, Mustafa has played a critical role in Al-Shabaab's operations. This includes media operations, training of soldiers, participating on attacks on Somali government forces and African Union troops, and holding various leadership positions.
From the brief information released about Mustafa, it's unclear what caused the Wisconsin-born, San Diego-raised man to terrorism. We're told he grew up in the Serra Mesa area, attended Mesa College, and graduated from the University of California, San Diego in 2004. Just 2 years later, the FBI says his involvement with terrorist groups began.
We believe Mustafa has played and will continue to play an active role in terrorist acts by Al-Shabaab, and he must be stopped.
If you have information about Mustafa, you can call the FBI, 800-CALL-FBI, or send tips online to tips.fbi.gov. And remember, you don't have to give your name. Right now, the Philippines bracing for more misery from a powerful typhoon that's ravaging the country. Typhoon Kamori has left at least 4 people dead and 500,000 people huddled in evacuation centers. The storm packing wind gusts as high as 150 miles per hour, the equivalent of a Category 4 hurricane. Kamori is expected to hit Manila with intense rainfall overnight, risking severe flooding in the city that is home to some 10 million people. Tonight, former President Jimmy Carter is on the mend and eager to get back home. His spokesperson says the 95-year-old is being treated for a urinary tract infection, but he's feeling much better. This comes just days after he was released following surgery to relieve pressure on the brain caused after a couple of recent falls. Carter is the oldest living former president. There's a lot more news headed your way. We'll speak to an author whose mission is to bring people back to the church, what he's telling pastors they need to do.
The food here at Holy Cross High School is far from your typical cafeteria food. I'm Emily Truby, and coming up, I'll tell you what makes it so special.
Also ahead, a pilgrimage to deep in faith Mexican Americans make the journey from the Holy Land to Rome to see the Pope. And do you have a story idea or you want to share a tip? Just email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our number 24 hours a day, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Well, not a PB&J inside at Holy Cross High School. They're going gourmet for lunch and the students are gobbling it up. Holy Cross is going above and beyond for their students, not just providing food for thought, but a gourmet meal that is feeding them body and soul. Emily Drury reports from inside the Flushing cafeteria.
Homemade bread and creamy chicken. These paninis are made fresh every day, but this isn't a restaurant. It's a high school.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Holy Cross in Flushing, Queens is changing the game when it comes to cafeteria food, ditching the mystery meat for items like steak, spinach pie, and baked ziti.
Really good. It's like my grandmother made it for me and I'm at home.
Food made fresh daily at the school, and extra effort that students can taste. It's thanks to Corrado Food Service Group, brought in by the school 2 years ago to provide healthy, fun, and unique choices.
So we really just try to see what they want, but we try to keep it as balanced as possible.
They also listen to students while creating the menus.
I feel like all the food choices we have are very diverse, and every single day there's a different type of theme or type of food.
As you can see, there's so many different options here, but one thing remains consistent.
The food's great, the fries, everything's really good.
Principal Edward Burns says the food is a far cry from the school lunches most people grew up with.
I think they all think back to their school experience, and then they come and see what we have for choices, and it's just opened a world of different opportunities.
An extra perk at Holy Cross Catholic High School, making sure kids are happy, healthy, and ready to learn. In Flushing, Emily Druby, Currents News.
One man is helping bring people back to the church for the Christmas season. Tim Glankowski is the author of Made for Mission, a book which gives churches a practical approach on evangelization by addressing the real problems facing pastors today. Tim joins us now from Denver, Colorado with more. First of all, Tim, thanks for joining us.
No, thanks so much for having me.
Hey, Tim, break this down for us. What do you think are the biggest problems when it comes to the church and bringing people into the pews?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, what we're looking at is a difficult cultural moment for the church, where this is an issue that every Catholic is confronted with, is a reality of pews that are emptying and fewer and fewer people practicing the faith, and a lot of questions arise of what can be done. To me, really, there are kind of three core issues that parishes in so many ways are wrestling with. The first is a lack of a culture of discipleship. Really, this is the core issue, and everything else is, in certain sense, a symptom of that deeper problem where too few Catholics have experienced a life-changing encounter with Jesus that really is the core basis that forms the why of their faith. The second, I'd say a lot of our parishes are facing and dioceses are facing difficult questions of infrastructure. The changing demographics in our culture have created a position for a lot of like my home diocese, the Archdiocese of Chicago, and other places where there's really issues where a lot of the cultural reality that was once present maybe in the 1940s or 50s is no longer the case. We know that the fastest growing demographic in the country religiously is the nuns, or those who profess no religious faith. And then last, I would say that there's a real issue, a problem of not really reaching the core mission of the faith in so many ways, not really understanding as parishes, why do we exist? And then helping to articulate that why in a strong and compelling way to all of the people that come to our parishes.
Tim, what are some of the tips that pastors can do now to help revitalize evangelization?
Yeah, to me, the question is not just one or two tips or tricks, things that we can do a little bit differently, but it's how do we in general create parishes that operate where the core mission and vision of evangelization and making disciples is paramount in everything that we do. So in my book, Made for Mission, we talk about, we need pastors who are able to cast vision, who can really communicate and lead in a profound way parishes in this difficult cultural moment. Second, we want them to be able to build a clear path to discipleship. So is it really clear, how we form people who are mature Catholics who really understand the faith and really love it and are able to express that joyfully and passionately in the culture in a way that compels and entices people and doesn't, turn people off. Third, we really talk about how we mobilize leaders. The mission of the church is the responsibility of all of us, not just those, who took professed religious vows, but by our baptism, all of us are called into that mission. So as we're mobilized and then all the key ministries are aligned then with that vision for evangelization, we start to see parishes that are operating in a fundamentally different, new, renewed way of being a parish in this cultural moment.
Tim, it's the Christmas season, a big time for people who normally don't go to Mass, then they do go to Mass. Maybe they have a family member they want to bring. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think to me, that experience of Mass and the beauty of the liturgy is always a profound encounter. I think parishes should be ready to really tell people why religion matters. I think more and more people are becoming nuns because they're not really sure the difference that Christ can actually make. And if the only thing we show them is just kind of business as usual, we're just kind of rinse and repeat and, go through the motions again, I think they're not going to find a really compelling reason to potentially come back.
Hey, Tim, for people who want to read your book and get more information, where can they find it?
So go. Our Sunday Visitor is the publisher. It's available on Amazon as well, and they can get copies now.
Tim, before I let you go, what was it like putting this book together?
Yeah, it's a profound experience of really taking a lot of what the book came from is we have worked with parishes throughout the years, and it was this experience of kind of reflecting back on what we've learned as we've walked with parishes through this culture change and really say, what's made a difference? Because a lot of parishes are asking this question of what can be done differently, and we almost had to reflect back on our own experiences. So it was a very meditative practice in some ways.
Tim Glemkowski, author of Made for Mission, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
On this Giving Tuesday, it's a good time to give Catholic. There are several ways you can pitch in. Make a gift to your local Catholic school. Consider giving an extra donation at your parish or contribute to your favorite Catholic organization. You can also donate to the Catholic Foundation of Brooklyn and Queens by visiting cfbq.org and clicking on the Donate Now button in the upper right corner. The organization supports a number of important programs in the Brooklyn Diocese. Still to come on Currents News, the father of a wheelchair-bound child struggles to use the subway. His plea to the MTA to make it easier for everyone to get around underground. And is your smart TV spying on you? The warning from the FBI is next. And please check out one of the latest features in the tablet, the Our Diocesan Family page. That's where you can send in photos of your family receiving certain sacraments such as baptism, first communion, confirmation, and marriage. More information and to submit your pictures, go to thetablet.org/ourdiocesanfamily. We'll be right back. Today is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and Pope Francis is defending the dignity of people who are challenged. Now, people with disabilities are increasingly being threatened by a society that discriminates and views them as a burden, says the Pope in a letter. He adds, humanity needs to develop antibodies against a culture that considers some lives as Class A and others as Class B. This is a social sin. The Holy Father's words ring especially true for disabled New Yorkers trying to navigate the city's mass transit system. Currents News' Emily Druby is back now with an update on a story about a Brooklyn family that feels shut out from going underground.
Ready? Yeah. When the Hallecks get their two kids ready for a day out, one thing they want to avoid, the subway.
We really don't take the subway as a family.
Sasha and his wife Sarah have a 3-year-old son Oliver who sometimes uses a stroller and a 6-year-old son Judah who can't walk on his own.
We would carry Judah down the stairs in his wheelchair, but as he got bigger and his wheelchair got heavier, that's just not possible. And so that's really limited us in terms of the subway.
They don't use the subway because at too many stations, there's no safe way to access the platform. Instead, they use the bus. Sasha tells us an elevator is being built here at their Eastern Parkway subway stop, but by the time it's done, they'll be in their next apartment facing the same problem.
We will be near 2 subway stops, neither of them have elevators.
The Hallecks just one of many families facing accessibility problems in New York City, a recent issue highlighted by the death of Malaysia Goodson, a mom who passed away after falling down subway station stairs while carrying a stroller.
All the times that I've walked up the steps carrying a baby in a stroller or carrying my son who's 6 years old and can't walk. What if something had gone wrong then? You know, how many times is there a little bit of water or ice even on the top of those steps? It was pretty scary to think about.
According to a 2018 report from the City Comptroller's Office, only 24% of the 472 subway stations citywide are accessible by an elevator, leaving many stuck. In Brooklyn, according to the report, there are 44 neighborhoods serviced by the subway, but 26 of those neighborhoods don't have a single accessible station. The Hallecks say they're encouraged by recent steps taken by New York City Transit President Andy Byford, who's making accessibility a key point in his plans to quickly modernize services. But the Hallecks haven't seen any changes yet.
On a day-to-day basis, we're still dealing with the same things.
The MTA built on that Fast Forward program with what's being called the Capital Plan, $5.5 billion dedicated to making 70 news stations accessible, not just for people in wheelchairs, but for people with all different types of impairments. CJ?
You know, Emily, those changes can take a while. So what options are out there for people right now?
So there are alternatives for the subway and also for buses, which can be difficult for people with disabilities to access. Accessoride is a city service. It'll pick you up, it'll drop you off at your location, your destination, but not all advocates are fans of this. Many of them call it difficult to use and unreliable. CJ?
All right, Emily, we wish the Halleck family well. Now, Emily, I hope you don't own a smart TV, because if you do, you want to pay attention to this story. The FBI is warning that screens with advanced tech like cameras and microphones could be spying on you. The feds are saying cyber criminals could hack the devices and potentially snoop or stalk you. Now, the FBI recommends changing the default password on the TV and consider putting black tape over the camera or disabling the microphone. And finally tonight, a journey to strengthen faith. A group of pilgrims, all with Mexican roots, traveling to the Holy Land and then to the Vatican to see the Pope. Rachel Dubrinsky has that story.
This is the patriotic celebration of a group of pilgrims who saw the Pope during his general audience. They share Mexican roots but come from different parts of the United States and Latin America. They traveled to the Holy Land and are now in Rome to see the Pope and renew their faith.
It was very exciting. He's Latino, which is very close to us. I saw him even closer than I see you now. He gives a wonderful impression that words can't even describe.
This pilgrim from Houston, Texas, also felt that way. She said seeing the Pope and visiting holy places have helped her grow as a Christian.
I didn't know anyone on this pilgrimage. I signed up and waited to find God. I found him in the other people in this group. I met some very good people. When I return to Houston, my life will be changed because I'm no longer the same.
For Jose Luis, seeing holy places in person allows people to understand faith better.
To come here and walk through these places is to understand faith and be witnesses of everything that happened in Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and now Rome and the Vatican. It strengthens relationships with God. There are 95 men and women on this pilgrimage, and each has a special touch of God's presence. It's touching.
Next year, they hope to organize more trips to other holy places around the world. For now, they will finish exploring Rome during the last few days of their visit. Rachel Dubrinsky, Currents News.
And members from the group are planning more trips that will serve to reinforce and invigorate their devotion to Jesus. That is Currents News. I'm CJ Papa. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.